Hello everyone, welcome to the Enchanter's vlog of shadows. My name is Lysander Xanthus and I am a clairvoyant psychic, energy healer, and self-described enchanter or user of magic if you prefer. So I created this to share my experiences, my recommendations, my magical and spiritual practices, and a little bit of what I know about everything. So I hope that you find some interesting ideas here and maybe a new way of looking at different things. So, what has been on my mind a lot lately is astrology. Obviously, if you're here, then you are a fan of the Morning Metaphysical Report, and so I do the astrology every single day for that show. But this is kind of like where my practice of astrology has come after studying it for a few years now. I first began looking into it with seriousness to understand my own chart better. And I just started with interpreting my birth chart as it is. And that kind of flowed into understanding what the chart was directing me to learn in my time here. And then I started to bring it into my magical practice and correlating it to events happening currently. And of course, thanks to the morning report and having to interpret every day, my understanding of it has increased even further. So I have found astrology to be extremely enriching, of course. And today I want to share with you a little bit about how to interpret charts, not only your own, but the chart of where the planets are each day. So we are going to take a little look at that. So the thing with astrology and learning how to interpret it is that each planet, each house, each sign, these are all pieces of a puzzle that you fit together. And I find that this is the best way to interpret. So let's take an example. This is my birth chart actually. So if you would like to get your own birth chart, if you don't have one already, I got mine through astro.com, and this is a natal chart with the ascendant. As you can see, there are the planetary glyphs and the signs around the outside, and that is showing the rulers of each house. Each little pie slice there on screen is what's called a house. Each house represents a different area of yourself and your life. Astrology, your chart, is not really meant to dictate who you are per se. It's not like a box you're set into. It's more like a starting point and showing you your own potential and your areas for growth. And it's a tool you can use to understand yourself better. So this is what mine looks like. Let's take a look at the houses. Houses don't come up much, but I have found it to be pretty critical to my own understanding of astrology, at least when you're reading personal charts like your own or those for others. So there are 12 houses, and on screen is more or less what each area represents. It is a lot of information, so studying it will take a little bit of time to remember what all the pieces mean. So, of course, first house is the self. The second house is money and what we value. Third house is our mental capacity. 4, I associate to the heart, our emotional state. 5 is our creativity and passion. 6 is health and work. 7 is relationships, but I like to think of it in a broad sense of literally how we relate to everyone, not just our partners. 8 is kind of an interesting house. I like to correlate it with marriage myself, as well as intimate matters and one's deep subconscious self. 9 is one's personal philosophy, the way you see things, your perception. 10 is your career, kind of what's ideal for you. 11 is your community and social connections. And 12 is also a subconscious from a different angle. Sometimes one's bad habits and undoing, and frequently one's spirituality. So this is kind of the frame in which the picture of your personal chart happens. And it's kind of the table by which everything is interpreted. So that's very helpful to know and understand. So we're going to take that away. And back to the personal chart. So when you're learning astrology, I highly recommend you start with your own birth chart. Just figure that out first. Figure out what it all means. Your chart can provide you with all kinds of interesting information about you. I know there's a lot of focus on the sun sign, but it's really just a 20th of the information available, and in my opinion, not the most important thing. It just describes your outer personality, how people see you, basically. Let's see. So, again, I encourage you to learn about your own chart first, and by extension, learn about astrology. Learn what sign each of your houses are in, and where the planets are, and the signs the planets are in, and how to fit all those pieces together. Because each sign represents certain qualities, each house represents certain aspects of your life, each planet represents aspects of your psyche. And of course, the sign that the planet is in and the sign that the house is in are not always the same. So these are all pieces to come together. And again, take your time. It took me like back when I seriously devoted time to it, like 6 hours a day for several weeks, to really understand my chart to my satisfaction. The chart from astro.com covers the main planets as well as Chiron, the wounded healer, and the destiny node, which I will talk about in a moment. It doesn't include the any asteroids or smaller bodies, but those are interesting things as well. I would say start with this basic chart and then branch out to things like your fortune or Vesta and so on later on. So once you understand your own chart, then my suggestion would be to interpret the charts of people who are close to you. Your significant other, certainly your partner, your friends, anyone you live with, or if you can't get anyone to give you their information to do their chart, you can look up examples online and ask yourself what this person is like. And once you've done all that, it is relatively more simple to interpret the daily planets. So this is not in context of like a astrology chart. This is just more like a image. This image comes from theplanetstoday.com, which is a site you can use to see where all the planets are in terms of their zodiac sign every single day. And this is where the planets are on March the 8th, 2020. So you interpret them in a similar way. You wouldn't incorporate the houses, because what sign rules what house is determined by the exact time, which changes every 2 hours. So you will just interpret the planets in relation to the signs and their transits and aspects. So the angles, essentially, that they are to each other. For example, if Mars was at a 90-degree angle to the sun, so they're at a right angle from each other, that would be an aspect. If the moon and Neptune were on opposite sides of the chart, exactly, that would be the aspect known as opposition. But again, these are all things that you can look up on your own. I'm just kind of talking about how to put it all together a little bit. And there are lots of good resources for learning astrology, lots of books, lots of teachers online. This is just sort of how to interpret things in your own way. 'Cause I find that I like my interpretations a bit more than most others. So that's how you'll kind of approach the daily planets. And once you are familiar with kind of sensing the energy in each day and as the planets move throughout time, throughout the month or year, then you'll be able to notice trends and maybe notice how different movements affect you or how you're feeling in your life or how the people around you are acting. I'd like to mention another resource to you, which is the Wee Moon. There are several astrology references. This is just one I've used. I'm pointing the wrong way. The reason I like this is that it lists the exact aspects for each day. And in the beginning of the book, it has a bunch of astrological references. So especially if you're new to astrology, there's a quick reference guide in the beginning that is very useful for understanding and kind of putting those pieces together for yourself. So Wee Moon is good for the aspects, but I still use this chart on screen to actually know where the planets are, because it doesn't actually list exactly where the planets are to start, so you kind of need that. I find it's useful to use both of these together, so to speak. And the aspects kind of lend additional nuances to the energy and the shifts that occur each day, each week, each month. And that's pretty interesting. So I encourage you to check that out, or other references. There are other good references for that as well. Taking a look at my notes, sometimes I have so many thoughts or so much information that it's hard to think of which thing would make the most sense to say next. So let's talk about interpretation a little more. Then we'll talk about how to use astrology in your spiritual development and in magic. So, astrology interpretation has its own kind of logic to it. I have said this like 5 times already, but it's like fitting the pieces together. Each thing means something, so it's just kind of layering those meanings together to create a cohesive interpretation. And I would like to tell you to be wary of accepting certain kinds of interpretation, such as discussion of karma or karmic fulfillment, especially involving specific other people in your life. Just because I have heard some interpretations of things where I would never interpret them, even think to interpret them that way, but that they actually encourage toxic relationships and situations or are massively disempowering. So I strongly encourage you to interpret a little bit for yourself, or to think about how certain astrological combinations come across to you, and to kind of tune into your own guidance a bit. I encourage you, as you look up each planet, each zodiac sign, and each house, to develop your own keywords for everything to associate a feeling or energy that you recognize as pertaining to that and symbolizing what it represents, each thing. I know that because of the strong focus on the sun sign, we tend to think of all the zodiac signs as being like personalities. And I said it will help you if you detach from that perspective and associate qualities in a more open-ended way. We all contain energies from several of the signs because each of our planets is in a different sign, and so are our houses. So we all have bits and pieces of most of them. Not many people have something in every single sign, but there's a little bit of everything there. So you're not just Virgo in its absolute Virgo-ness. Again, the sun sign accounts for relatively so little of the entirety of who you are as described in astrology. So I encourage you to do that. Now let us onto so I encourage you to look at your own chart, and some of the things I would like to point out, the things that have been the most helpful to me and why astrology has been on my mind, are the Destiny node, your Saturn sign, and your Chiron sign. And I'll talk about why. When I began studying astrology, it all described kind of either who I was, ways I developed, things I experienced in my life, but more importantly, there are things that are signs for ways that one needs to develop. The destiny nodes or moon nodes, not a planet per se, it's a certain point along the moon's orbit. And there's a north node and a south node. The north node indicates your destiny in short, but more specifically, the way you are being encouraged to develop within this lifetime. And usually it is in a sign with characteristics that feel extremely unnatural to you, which is why you're being encouraged to develop in that direction. But it is so important. To me, in my opinion, this is the most important thing in your chart. And the reason is that when you actually develop those qualities in yourself and start to live your life more in alignment with the values of your north node, life works better and you grow as a person in a positive way. And I've experienced this massively for myself. The south node represents a place that is extremely comfortable and natural and that we fall into quite easily. So fulfilling the north node is very challenging. The south node and north node are on opposite ends of the chart from each other, so they will always be in opposing signs. And frequently people say that the south node reflects who you were in a past life or your sun sign in a past life. To be honest, I disagree. The thing is, when it comes to astrology and our souls and reincarnation, which I do believe in, I've found that souls gravitate to vessels with the right birth time, or they influence the birth time of the vessel. Because the entry point, it's kind of like the time that the soul becomes incarnated needs to be in harmony with its essential nature. And because of that, your chart becomes an extremely valuable key to the nature of your soul, not your ego self, your actual soul, and where its areas of challenge and growth are. And the truth is, after having done many readings for many people, not just astrology charts, but intuitively and past life readings, frequently your South Node qualities and the issues of the South Node are ones that have been with your soul for a very long time, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And the reason why you might wonder, why does it take so long to get over it? Mostly lack of information. It's not like a knowledge of astrology was exactly common through most of history. And even the idea of personal development or growth was not widespread for most of history. So we are in a very fortunate time where there is the information's shared very freely, so we have the opportunity to choose to develop ourselves and use that information or not. So that's my perspective of the South Node, is that chances are these are qualities you have struggled with, not just in this lifetime, but your soul has for quite some time. For myself in particular, this is my South Node has been an issue for almost my entire existence. So it is especially challenging but extremely important to do that work for yourself, to stretch and push yourself. I will give you a personal example because obviously I know my own chart fairly well. My North Node is in Capricorn and my South Node is in Cancer. So it's very natural for me to be very sensitive, emotional, preoccupied with the past, and to be codependent, even extremely attached to other people and affected by them, but also kind of existing a bit as an island on my own. Now, that the other thing you'll want to consider when it comes to your nodes or any other planet, and what it represents is the house it's in, because that influences nuances of your destiny and how you're being encouraged to grow as well. So South Node's in the first house, so it's kind of like being an island, just being concerned with myself. The North Node is in the seventh house, which is relating to others. Because of other planets and aspects and so on, essentially the North Node is to be able to relate to others on a large scale, not one-on-one as individuals, but me towards many people, and to exercise qualities of leadership, to be grounded, practical, to be independent, so and not be emotionally enmeshed with others, and to exercise those Capricorn qualities which don't come. It's like it's hard for me to fulfill them, and they don't come entirely naturally, but they are in me. They're in there somewhere. And I think that's the important thing to remember, is as challenging or alien as your North Node may seem to you, it is in you somewhere, and you just need to pull out those traits and choose to exist in that way. I have discussed nodes with other people, and sometimes discussing the North Node, people have gotten very offended because they're living so much in their South Node traits that the idea of being otherwise is very difficult to fathom. But I encourage you to do that, because being in the South Node can actually be actively detrimental. I know that things go way worse for me when I am living in the South Node, and I've seen that in other people. Every time it causes so many problems. So many of our problems in life are created by living in those traits. They're like personal weaknesses, really. So there is that, and that can be very enriching to know and to follow. The other thing is the Saturn sign, and the reason why I'm pointing this out is because of Saturn return, which is essentially this Saturn making its orbit around the sun and returning to the sign it was in when you were born, and that takes about 30 years. And Saturn when it returns, it is essentially asking us to learn lessons, to grow and mature and step into the next stage of our lives. And many people find this extremely challenging. The sign Saturn is in is indicating in what ways not only do you need to mature, but it is describing qualities that would be very helpful to bring into your life so you experience less turmoil. It's like being more true to yourself. For example, my Saturn is in Aquarius, and my return is actually coming up very soon, my first one. So I've been trying my best to live more in alignment with the qualities and principles that my Saturn is, the sign my Saturn is in. And one of the ways I've been preparing for that is by following the qualities of the North Node. I have found in people's charts that there is a relationship between your Saturn sign and the North Destiny Node, where it's like if you fulfill the qualities of your North Node, then fulfilling Saturn comes a lot more naturally, and you are far less likely to experience the turmoil and forceful shedding that sometimes occurs. Frequently, we made choices that aren't truly in alignment with our destiny or purpose, regardless of our own ideas for our lives. When Saturn return comes, it can strip away relationships, careers, living situations, etc. Ideas we have about who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. So yes, it is. Astrology has been very much on my mind. I started studying this a few years ago, and I learned about Saturn return back then. And so I've essentially been spending the time between then and now trying to develop myself, and I have experienced a lot of positive changes in me and in my life due to that. The last thing I want to point out is Chiron. This is the wounded healer. So the sign your Chiron is in indicates where a core wound is. Chances are you've experienced events in your life already that tap into that energy. And it is an area where you're particularly sensitive and it's difficult to heal. But if you focus on that wound and you can heal it for yourself, then you will be especially adept at assisting others through that same dilemma. So that is also a nugget of gold hiding in your chart. So that's kind of how to use astrology for your own benefit. Now I'd like to talk about magic. Knowing your chart is useful, and understanding the astrological influences on any given day is useful. The first thing I want to say is that you don't need any particular alignment or to wait for any particular time to do magic. Ultimately, it's about your intention. But if you do correlate it with astrology, you are bringing in that additional energy, and it can lend a real boost. So you can correlate magic with where the planets are during a certain time just on that alone. And that is very helpful. And there are so many ways to incorporate planetary energy. There is a lot of material about planetary magic. You can just use the planets themselves. I would suggest that you consider the sign the planet is in as well when you're working with it. But it is possible to isolate energies in your magic. So if you just want to use Mars, not the sign it's in, it is possible. You just need to be sure you are putting that intent there. Now, it's very useful to know your chart and to understand how that relates to what's happening any given day, because that will inform your magic as well. You may find that there's something happening today, just as an example, or there's something happening on Monday, and because of the nuances in that energy, it would affect this planet or this aspect in your chart a certain way that would be very favorable. So you hadn't planned anything that day, but you figure since this is happening, the energy is there, you're going to take a ritual bath to heal a particular wound or to develop a certain part of your personality. So that's one way of planning around it. Or if you specifically want to work on, say, your Chiron to heal that or to develop the house of your career, you can look at astrological events and see if anything is currently happening that would be favorable. I've actually found events where it's like, it's actually better to not engage with this energy at all because of things in my chart. An example of that is that, for example, sorry, a tendency to babble. If you engage with moon magic is the most popular form of planetary magic. And let's say you like to do something every new moon, but the sign the moon is in is the same sign as your south node. It is probably better to not do anything that new moon, just because. Will it be massively detrimental? Probably not, but you may encourage or feed into that energy within yourself, which may not be the most helpful thing. Especially if it's not just a new moon, but an eclipse. And I would say when it's eclipse, you should probably definitely avoid it then. Another reason that astrology was so much on my mind today is the Mercury Retrograde. We are currently in one right now at the time of this filming, but it does come 3 times a year, so it is a pretty frequent happening. And people are very concerned about that particular retrograde, but all the planets, I think all of them, retrograde at one point or another. And this is energy you can use to your advantage, just like any astrological event. So, retrogrades, for example, are times of reconsidering bringing up things again for review, which makes it an excellent time for releasing magic or banishing magic, letting things go, removing them from your life, from yourself, or transforming them for healing, for example. And there are so many useful ways to do it, and I think that it's been really incredible for that awareness to just kind of slowly evolve in my own mind. So I encourage you to invest the time in learning all of it and taking the time to understand your chart and where the planets are, and in your own magical practice, kind of let that understanding slowly blossom of how to correlate that to your map, all those pieces together, or how to utilize them in your spell work in a way that is truly effective. So I think we looked at everything we're going to look at on this page. We're going to go back to the main page. So, astrological and planetary energy can be used in all kinds of workings. You can use it for blessings. You can just bless a person or an object, your clothes, your home, jewelry, literally anything that you would like to emanate that energy to exert such an influence on yourself or others or a situation. You can put that energy into an oil if you create intention oils, into ritual baths, into beverages, your meals. You can use it, like I described with retrogrades, especially Mercury retrogrades, for clearing and banishing work. You can also invite in specific energies to heal yourself, to help you attract certain things into your life. You can create amulets, especially for those of you who use the planetary seals of Solomon. You can actually use, like, for example, a seal of Venus and imbue it with energy from Venus, keeping in mind probably the sign that it's in at that moment. That does influence the energy a bit. So I wanted to talk about that today. It's something I find so interesting, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk to someone about it, because mostly people don't find it too interesting where I am. I know that I've kind of been a talking head at you for most of this time, but I hope that it was interesting and inspired some thoughts. Most of all, I really want to hear your thoughts, your input, or your experiences in studying astrology. Believe it or not, we're not done yet. I was just saying my thoughts. Again, referring to my notes, I don't forget things that I wanted to mention. So I want to share with you a ritual that I found and I'm still finding so transformative. We are going to get to that in just a moment. I'm deciding what order I want to do things in. Yes. All right. So let's do our how-to for the month next. This ritual comes from Financial Sorcery by Jason Millen. Speaking of planetary magic, this entire book is focused on Jupiter magic and invoking the spirit and intelligence of the planet Jupiter in your work, specifically for wealth and for financial opportunity. Now, even though this ritual was written with one's financial health in mind, you can utilize it for many different purposes. This is called Moving Your Set Point, and it's on page 95 in this book. And I'm going to read the ritual to you, and you can either purchase this book for yourself. It's pretty inexpensive on Amazon, and utilize this, or you can just listen to this video again and follow along. The only thing you'll need is a pen, a piece of paper, and your imagination. So I'm not going to read all the description because I want to put it into context of this video today. I have been utilizing this ritual during the Mercury Retrograde to release things that pertain to this particular retrograde, things I felt were being brought up and revisited to let go, so that that energy could be freed up and used to make forward progress rather than being stuck in the past. So this is an example of using an astrological energy and ritual together to assist a self-healing work. You may be watching this at any time, but during the time of this filming, we just left Mercury retrograde in Pisces. It's in retrograde still, but in Aquarius. While it was in Pisces, there's a focus on revisiting plans, hopes, and expectations that were not fulfilled, and our regrets. So I created a list of a few of these hopes and plans and regrets that were never fulfilled. So it was all these hangups about things that didn't happen, which is an interesting block to work on. And the shifts that doing this created, I know it's not really apparent in my public life, but it was really transformative. So I highly recommend this ritual. And you can do this anytime, regardless of astrological events or planetary influence. But it's especially powerful if you can wisely connect it with something. So that was just an example to give you an idea. Mercury retrograde, in particular, was what I was working with. All right. So I'm going to begin reading the Releasing Your Set Point ritual. At the moment, we are only concerned with breaking free from negative patterns and self-sabotaging actions so we can move our set points. Begin by looking back at the past, not for what you think may be the causes of your set point. For example, the set point is a reference to you only seem to ever make the same amount of money, or you always end up with the same kind of people, or the same kind of things happen again and again and again. And maybe it was caused because your parents always told you how lazy or awful you were, or you saw a certain relationship dynamic being displayed to you. So we're not looking at the causes of that set point, the things that created your patterns. Instead, you're going to look for examples of you giving in to your set point, to your pattern. Examples: the time you were going to buy that rental property but chickened out. The time you were considering getting an advanced degree but backed out because it seemed like too much work. The time when you were going to go for a promotion at work but did it half-heartedly, thinking that it really did not matter all that much. Or not asking someone out, or think of any situation in which you chose comfort over progress, any time in which you let yourself down, any time in which your own choices deprived you of forward movement. When you gave in to what was comfortable and familiar. And that might be a difficult thing to look at. These events happen to all of us. You should come up with at least 3, and as many as 9 examples of real life regrets. Once you have your list, perform the following ritual. I strongly advise you not list more than 9, because otherwise this ritual will take you forever. This is a 9-day ritual. So what I'm about to read to you is what you will do once a day for 9 days straight in a row. So keep that in mind. This ritual can take between 10 minutes to an hour, depending how many things you've listed. And actually write these things down. You don't have to describe them in detail, just a quick reference so you know what event you are referring to. I like to, when I'm working with astrological influence, I'll write the planetary glyph and the zodiac sign glyph. And when I'm working in retrograde, I do the retrograde glyph, which is an R with a cross through the leg. To really invoke in that planetary influence. But otherwise, just write them down so you can refer to them. Also, after the 9th day, I also like to burn this piece of paper. So those are my own additions to this ritual that I am sharing with you. So you've got your list. Perform a zone rite of your choice. This can be a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, a circle casting, calling of the corners, or any kind of ritual that sets up sacred space. So whatever you do to set up your area energetically for ritual work. Within that space, perform an energy exercise to kind of put yourself in balance. In the book, he teaches the pillars and spheres exercise. Some of you practice the 3 columns. I just ground my energy and I invoke in cosmic energy to kind of fill in the spaces, just sort of like clearing myself and calling in real quick to put myself in a neutral state. After you've done this, you'll make yourself comfortable and imagine a blazing fire in front of you. This fire burns with such intensity that when something is consumed by it, not even the name of the thing remains. Now, call to mind an image of the first event on your list. You should see it clearly in your mind, but because of your setup and meditation, you should feel somewhat more distant and dispassionate about it. This won't always be the case. If it's something that particularly stabs you in the heart, it will still be extremely painful, but persist through the exercise. When you are ready, see that image, fold into a cube mentally. I'm tactile, so I like to hold my hands in front of me and envision that cube into my hands. And I like to envision or intend the energy of that event, that memory, that emotion, to really channel it into the cube I'm holding. So that takes a moment or two. Once you have that cube, the memory's in there, cast it into the fire. As you do so, say something along the lines of, I release myself from the bondage of the past. I cast my failure and my feelings about that failure into the razor fire. In the space of spontaneous awareness, not even the name of obstruction exists. But, so when I do this, I actually repeat that verbatim. I really like it, it works for me, it gets results, and it really encapsulates the sentiment I have. I really do feel like, the events on my list are failures, ways I have failed. So casting that and the way I feel about it is very helpful. But I'm not going to get into what that represents, but it's like a ritualistic sound. And I don't remember what it means anymore, but I still do it because it creates the result I desire. Now you're going to repeat that process for every event on your list. So you could see how if you have more than 9 things, it can take a while. Once you've gone through every item on your list, you should again quickly perform your energy exercise of choice to rebalance the elements within your body. So for me, it's ground and call in light from above. So whatever you like to do. Lastly, turn your attention upward through the central channel of your body to the star center above the body, which is like a chakra that is located above the crown center and above the physical head. So imagine up here this star, a bright star. And as you do so, sound this syllable. It is pronounced just like the word hue, but stretched out over several seconds, like that. Feel the energy of this center, which is connected to all stars everywhere, unlock and descend through the body, feeling the work done. So I see the star kind of brighten and unlock figuratively and descend through the center column, through all the chakras, and then back up again, and then down and rest in the center. And I like to see the star expand and fill the entirety of my aura, feeling the work done. And this is also a sacred syllable that represents Spirit's constant descent into matter, and that this is important to finish the work with that because it fills the void that you created by releasing your past. That's the end of the ritual. So you will want to repeat that for 9 consecutive days. All right, so I would love to hear your experiences in using this. And trust me, it's going to get annoying after the third or fourth day, but I have to insist that you follow through with all 9 days. It does make a difference. Even if you're just going through the motion, you don't feel anything anymore. One, which is good, it means it's working, but still, the work is not done yet just because you're not upset about it anymore. So please do that. All right, so I'm really excited to hear about it, your experiences with it. I want to finish up with, so that was financial sorcery. Thank you, Jason. I would like to finish up with homework for the month. I think it would be fun to encourage you to take on a subject of study or a spiritual practice for the next month until the next Log of Shadows. So I encourage you, if you don't have your astrological birth chart, get it. There are tons of free calculators online. I like astro.com, but there are others. Get your chart and learn the glyphs for the planets and zodiac signs and start reading about it. You can find interpretations online. People sell interpretations. There are free interpretations. If you Google each thing, like Mars in Aquarius or Mars in 9th house, it'll come up on Google, and you can look up each individual thing and kind of put it together for yourself if you don't want to figure out how to interpret it. So you could still get a really good interpretation that way. If you already have your birth chart, you're already familiar with it, I encourage you to start interpreting the charts of the significant people in your life and correlating them to them and how the two of you interact. And or observe the daily planets through the Planets Today or another resource and interpret the movements. And you can refer to other people's work to help you kind of get a grip for it. Pick one of those things. All three of those is kind of a lot. So choose a focus. Get your own birth chart and focus on interpreting that. Or start interpreting the charts of those closest to you. Or observe the daily planets and interpret the daily movements. So that is your homework for March. My suggested practice for the next month is to do a brief meditation. It could be a minute, like literally 1 minute, where you sit with yourself and you focus on a specific planet or a specific zodiac sign. You can think of the name, the image of the thing, or the glyph, and just focus on that and imagine or intend that you are connecting with that celestial energy and just feel it out. How does it feel to you? What do you experience connecting with that energy? So again, whether you let me know in the comments here or on other platforms, I would love your feedback. I would love to know your thoughts, your experiences in doing this. And I hope you've enjoyed spending this time with me today. I've really enjoyed it talking with you guys. It's nice to talk to someone who's interested in the subject. So I really appreciate you guys listening. In other news, just to, because I finally have someone to share things with, I got myself a new cauldron the other day. This is, as you can see, a silver bowl, and it is tarnished at this point. But mostly I like to use it to burn candles. This is probably something we'll cover another time. It's nice, contained and fire safe in its legs so that it doesn't burn through the bottom on whatever surface it's. These are things I like. All right. Well, suppose I will let you go for now. I've had a great time, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys again next month. Be blessed. Have a beautiful evening, morning, whatever time of day it is. And see you next time.